I'm always jazzed. I'm jazzed to talk about cybersecurity.
Oh,
I'm
that's
a true.
awesome. So wait,
Yep.
Tyler, before we start, I read that you were recently accepted to the Forbes group. There's an elite group for on cybersecurity. Can you tell us a little bit about it, please?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. I appreciate you you noticing that and bringing that up. The Forbes Tech Council. So it's kind of a members only type consortium to where you get together and there's different leaders from different technology businesses around the world, some Fortune companies out there, and then myself from a cybersecurity perspective to really give our insights and combine those to further drive technological advancements and advancements in cybersecurity, and just making the world a better place from a tech perspective. So really happy to be there, and it's been pretty awesome so far. So a lot of writing and articles and different things going on in that arena.
That is great. And just like you were saying of the record, all the like the things that are happening right now, you're so excited to talk to us about it. I can't wait to get going on this. So, and we have some questions, like prior questions to this. So you're gonna get questions from prior, you're gonna get questions, answers that you had, and also maybe we can get some audience questions, right?
Perfect, perfect.
All
Ask
right.
away. Please do.
Okay, so we're going to start with the PDF, the information that you actually want to talk about and that you have been exposed to lately. And one of them that I have on the screen, I'm not sure if you can see it, is phishing scams.
Yep. So let's take it away from there, right? So phishing is it's a really big part of I think what every cybersecurity professional is dealing with and has been dealing with for a very long time now. And I think the majority of us out there, everybody's got email accounts, we've got social media, so we understand generally what phishing is. And we're here to talk about a little bit about what are those consequences, because I think that sometimes those aren't maybe seen in the light that they need to be. So just because of COVID, I mean, a lot of things have changed. I mean, our whole world has changed really
Hmm.
for a lot of different reasons, some good, some bad. But from a cybersecurity perspective, phishing attacks are up almost 600%.
Oh,
So
wow.
organizations, yeah, it is absolute insanity. The company that I work for, IGI out of Rochester, we have an incident response team. We're constantly dealing with cyber attacks and helping out businesses recover from them. And 95% of the time, these attacks are coming in from a phishing email. And they sometimes they start at a very personal level, which we're going to kind of break into a little bit. But all in all, 600% increase is pretty sharp, and it's keeping everybody on their toes lately.
Holy cow. And this is why I'm so thankful that you took the time to, to be here with us and educate us about what's going on. Because, we think that we're like, oh yeah, we're savvy and everything, right? But once you get
Yep.
those emails and just like you mentioned, oh yeah, it's very personable, we are tempted. And that gets us because we're humans, right? So
Sure, sure.
so go ahead and give us those examples, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting perspective. My team and I, we are on both sides of this fence. So we're on the receiving side and helping organizations to respond to breaches, to respond to phishing attacks and things like that. But on the flip side, companies actually hire my team to break into their organizations from a digital perspective. So we see both sides of this equation and we understand what we can give to employees in form of an email or in form of a message or a phone call that can pull information out of them. And that's what we call social engineering, which we're going to deep dive on that a little bit and what that means.
Okay, so
Um,
wait, Tyler. So wait, you're saying that you actually do the employees know that this is being done, or does the company says, hey, IGI, here's what I want you to do to see how secure our network is, and then you guys go ahead and do it?
Correct. Yeah. There'll be certain people within the company that will understand what's going on. So if it's a bank, you're talking maybe the president of the bank and some of their staff members may know we're going to be under attack because we've paid this company to do this to test out our security. But the general employees, they never really know what's going on, and that's the beauty about it is to understand from a real life perspective of what could an attacker do with the tools at their disposal to get into an organization, and that's what we're trying to show these companies, and then we can help them to button up all of those security issues that they may have. So you don't know that they're there unless you expose them, or if you're hit with a cyber attack, is usually when things start to change and you start to patch things up and correct things. So
But at that point, it's a little bit too late because what they wanted to do, which was infiltrate, right, is already done.
exactly. And it's over the years, right? We've been in this career field. I've been in this career field for going on 15 years now, and I've seen that the progression from businesses and companies being targeted to now it's at a very personal, individual level. And the one of the reasons is because we're everywhere. We are everywhere. I mean, your data, your online presence and your footprint has expanded so much that these attackers know that they can go to, if they want to target a bank, then they can go to Facebook, they can find employees through LinkedIn, they can go over to your social media accounts and find out more information about these employees that work there, because ultimately the way that they are getting into these companies is through the employees. It's not through, usually it's not through some digital discrepancy on a firewall or some kind of a computer. It could be, and that does happen from time to time, but the overwhelming majority are caused by human error, by human exploitation and social engineering of how these attackers are getting into organizations. So
So
it's
I'm
crazy.
sorry.
Yeah.
So okay. So say if I understand this correctly, so someone, an attacker, right, just goes in through an employee. The employee clicks that email. So that means that they already in because they already have access to that employee's computer, or how is that what you're saying?
So they could. So one of the things that we're typically seeing, and because everybody has shifted over to the cloud now, we all understand that our lives are in our Gmail accounts, and our lives are in our Yahoo accounts, and whatever other AOL. If you're still using AOL, switch away from that if you could. But there's our lives are in the cloud now. So what these attackers are doing is they're sending in these phishing emails. They're capturing your login credentials. So they're telling you your password expired, or your password must be reset, or some kind of an email to hook you in there. You go to a landing page and click on the link, and then once you get to that link, you enter in your credentials, and you don't know anything is happening, so you just walk away from it. But maybe an hour later, you realize that somebody is sending you emails and asking you, "What are you sending me? Why are you sending me all these emails?" And you soon realize that my account has been breached, and now this attacker is sending out emails on behalf of myself. That is about the top level of the worries. And when we start to get into some of these different cases, my team and I, we just worked an interesting case to where a phishing email came into an organization out of the DC area, one of our clients. They hit the president of the company and the vice president, gave up their credentials. And what the attackers were able to do is to monitor their email communications for enough time to where they got in the middle of a financial transaction. The financial transaction was significant enough to where they were actually able to steal over $1 million from this company. And by the time anybody had ever figured out what was going on, the attackers had already transferred the money to a bank in Hong Kong and sent in what they call a mule to pick up the money, and got into their private jet and flew back to South Africa where they were coming from. So you're talking a level of sophistication that has gone from the guy sitting in his parents' basement 15 years ago to nation state and organized criminal enterprises now using these tactics to get in, starting with your Facebook account, to get into your company and then make their way throughout these organizations. It's absolutely stunning to see.
That is it. Okay. So like, when that happens, how was the time that the customer has to, or say you guys, who are
Yep.
in, to kind of stop it, like stop,
Right.
is there monitoring devices that it's like, okay, there's kind of like a hit, and then you follow up through that? Because I mean, I thought that only happened in movies, right? Like, oh
No.
yeah, you got this, and send the money, and then they go, right? But it's
Right.
real life, and for them to be able to get into that account and watch that transaction, get the money, transfer it,
Yep.
go, it's just
Yeah.
sophisticated. I mean, insane.
Sure. It's insane. Yeah, it's insane. And I mean, in this particular case, they were watching, the bills that this target company were overdue on. So they were waiting for these periods in which the company that they had hacked into had to pay these large bills to whoever their customers were, or their counterparts. Basically, what they did is, as soon as they knew that transaction was going to trigger an alert with the accounting department, they sent a message appearing to come from the recipient of that payment and saying, please change the routing number on this account. Your account, this is due today, but we've changed banks. So it was as simple as that, and the money was gone. And by the time they realized the money was gone, the customer who was actually expecting the money had called them a few days later and said, "Are you going to pay us anytime soon? This is kind of a lot of money." And they said, "We already did." And that's when we got the call, and then we engaged. So it was days later when they actually figured out what had happened.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. So it isn't even like the same day later or anything. It's just like, and by that
Oh,
time, the
yeah.
the hackers already did their
They're
thing.
gone.
They already
Yeah.
cleaned their path, right? No breadcrumbs, nothing.
Exactly, exactly. And what we're finding, there's a lot of interesting statistics out there today. What I find interesting to statistics may not be interesting to others, but what we're finding is that organizations are generally breached for a period of 180 days before they even know. So that's a long time. That's a half a year to where your organization can be compromised in multiple ways, and your teams may not even understand that that has happened. That's the gap that we're working with right now, and that's why it's a very demanding career field, and why we're short on professionals and always looking for help. It's because there's a significant problem, and this is an absolutely enormous industry of cybercrime. The monetary values are absolutely staggering. They can't even keep track of how much money is flowing through these criminal organizations. They are so sophisticated. Now, when we boil all of these different situations down, and this is a real recurring theme, is what we see from dealing with these incidents. And personally, I've done about 400 cyber attack responses in my career, a lot of them. And the overwhelming majority is they've lacked basic security protections to implement. And they haven't met those basics. And usually these organizations have moved on to far more advanced techniques of defense while simultaneously leaving those low-hanging fruit really untouched. And that seems to be the recurring theme, is there are simple things that organizations can do at a foundational level to protect themselves, but they just don't do it. They overlook them because they want to buy the latest technology and spend $5 million on this latest software. Meanwhile, they've missed those gates to where we always see these attackers getting in, and that's the scary part that we're really seeing right now.
So let's mention, say, two of those basic,
Yeah.
things that they fail to get under.
Yep. So, number one that we see, and this goes for anybody who's out there, even at a personal level, right? This isn't just for organizations and companies, this is for individuals alike, as multi factor authentication on your accounts, or two-factor authentication tokens, whatever it's called, whatever your different service calls it. Basically, the one time passcodes that you receive on your phones when
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to get an account, set those up on everything that you have. Every single account that you have that offers two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, set those things up. Your iPhones have it by default with facial recognition, right? Your devices are becoming equipped with these things, but set that up on all of your accounts, your iCloud accounts, your Gmail accounts, your work email. If your work doesn't implement those, ask them as an employee. Say, I heard that we're supposed to be using multi-factor authentication, because if I get phished, right? So if I have multi-factor authentication set up on my work email, let's say
Mm-hmm.
somebody sends a phishing email and I make a mistake and I accidentally give them my credentials, I don't recognize that this is a malicious email. That attacker would still need to have my cell phone in their hands to get into my account, right? They would still need
Oh.
that second factor of authentication. So at the end of the day, that really doesn't matter anymore. Yeah, the attackers may have your credentials, and please don't reuse your credentials on Facebook and Gmail and all these different services, because if they get one set of these credentials, they will try all of these other platforms to get into
Mm-hmm.
all of your accounts. So separate your passwords, make them different and unique, and also implement multi-factor authentication. Those are great steps. There are ways around that are a little bit more sophisticated, to where we can get into a little bit, but for the overwhelming majority, these attackers are looking for low-hanging fruit. And if you are not an easy target and have these basic security settings built in, they will recognize that and they will likely move on, unless you're what we call a painted target, right, as an organization. If somebody has their sights on you from an attack standpoint, things can get sophisticated pretty quickly. So, but yeah, those are some
Okay.
basic.
So I mean, and it is
Yeah.
very basic. I see that all the time, and like I have it on my phone, I have it on Facebook. But speaking of Facebook, right? You're not too keen on Facebook. You're like, nah, I don't have Facebook, even though it has this authentications. You just don't like. Tell me just a tiny bit before we move from phishing.
Yeah, so I have, and I think a lot of cybersecurity professionals have their own beliefs on social media, and we tend to drift away from them a little bit for different reasons. But they're treasure troves of information to find out details. And when we run exercises on our clients, and we're trying to find out, what are the habits of a corporate executive, Facebook is a treasure trove. We love it. We go on Facebook, we go on LinkedIn, we go on YouTube, we look at their YouTube's history, what they like. I mean, we go down the rabbit hole as far as finding out what our target organizations do, so that we can get into their lives and their company. So naturally, we look at it on the other side and say, if we can do this, then somebody can do that to us. And it's very difficult, to secure all these platforms, right? If you have Facebook and you have Twitter and whatever else you may have out there, it's just one more thing that you now have to worry about. Again, not social media has its purposes. Obviously, we're on here today, right? And it's got great use features. So if you are going to use it safely. And there are definitely techniques that we can go through that. But on the topic of Facebook, right? And one thing I see a lot of, and I've got to call it out, it's a pet peeve of mine. One thing that I see a lot of are people filling out online surveys and posting them, or at least I used to when I was on Facebook. Of what is your favorite color? What's your favorite food? What is your cat's name from the fourth grade? Like, what is your high school mascot? Don't do that. Those are your security questions. Stop.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's bad, right? Because when an attacker sees that, right, and a lot of these are malicious, they're mining that data to figure out what your security questions are, so that when they call your bank and they already have your social security number, that they know what your mother's maiden name is, they know what your high school mascot was, they know what your first car was. So pretty soon you don't have any more privacy, and they're getting into everything. So be really careful about what you share. There
Oh
are so
boy.
many things. There's so many things on Facebook, geotagging, right? So as a photographer, you know that within pictures there is metadata of
Hmm.
where the picture was taken. So as an attacker, I can go onto Facebook and download one of your photos, and if you took it from a cell phone or whatever the case may be, I can put that into a platform. It can tell me exactly where you took that picture. So you can start to triangulate somebody's location really quickly as well, and figure out where they are. Are they on vacation? Are they at home? Are they at the office? Where you can figure out a lot of stuff. So
Oh my god, and it
anyway,
is true. So it's like, so Facebook is like a biography, a records keeper, right? From all of us.
yeah,
So it makes sense, because when I want to know something about a customer, a customer is like, okay, taking my pictures. I'm like, okay, let me check them out. Let me see, and you do find information about them. So those things, though, I didn't think about. Where you mentioned, oh yeah, what's your favorite color? What's your this, and then what's your mom? Where you were born?
right.
Me particularly, I don't answer those questions, but what kind of gets to me is like, oh, look at what you have makeup. Do you remember that app that was on Facebook? Like, oh yeah, check out your makeup. That was facial
Yep.
recognition right there, right?
Was was, and you have to question these things, right? And that's why when we see these trends going across and they sweep across Facebook, right, in a day, and you have hundreds of millions of people who have now uploaded a a perfect image of their face to this platform, and they have no idea where this is going, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to look at these things and really ask, who's doing this? Who really wants this data? And on a couple of these different applications, to where it's the Age Me app, I think it was, or something similar to that, they found out that it was actually malicious, and it was going offshore into somebody in Russia. So we have to ask these questions about where are we sending our data, and who is doing what with this data. And that's the biggest concern. It's going to be a really interesting thing when the next generation comes up, is how are they going to deal with the cleanup from what we've done? And that's the real concerning part, is that in cybersecurity, we are essentially trying to put our arms around a falling toy chest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we just keep on packing more data and more data in there. And these organizations out there, they're not implementing the proper security and privacy controls, so that pretty soon, and it's already happening, that there's just this overflow of data and privacy, lack of privacy, and pretty soon you don't have to go far to figure out everything you need on a person. You can Google somebody's name right now, and you can figure out exactly who they are, where they've been, their jobs. I mean, you name it. There's a lot of data out there, so
Oh
gotta be
Jesus.
careful. Yeah, hopefully I'm not scaring everybody, but
Not.
it's just something to think about, right? It really is, to just pause and ask yourself, should I be more reserved on social media? Should I watch what I post? Should I secure my accounts? Yes, you absolutely should. You should, because there's a reason why those services are free.
Yeah,
Because your
that's
data,
true. And
yep,
so,
your
so
data
the
is worth a lot.
the takeaway from this one, from this first topic and segment was the basic things that us and companies can do to safeguard is a two-fact authentication, right? Or multiple authentications.
Yeah, there's what's called multi-factor authentication or two-factor. So multi-factor is something you know, something you are, and something you have. So something you know is your password or a username. So that's one factor. A second factor would be something you have, like a smartphone, a device where you get a code on, and then something you are is a biometric device. So a retinal scanner, something advanced, facial recognition. But two-factor authentication is just two of those. Multi-factor is three of those or more.
Okay, so we have one question about the passwords. What about, how they have those apps like, oh, you can keep all of your passwords in one place.
Yep. Yeah.
Safe?
You know what? It is to a certain extent. Here's what I say about those is at some point you are going to have to, you don't have to, but if you are going to choose one of those services, you have to trust that service to safeguard not just one, but all of your passwords. Is that risky? Sure, it definitely is. Is it less risky than you keeping those in notes on your iPhone? No, absolutely not. You shouldn't do that. Don't keep them in notes on your iPhone, right? So pick a service, but review that service and ask maybe the right questions. Do some research on what that service is. But again, if you want to be extremely secure, keeping those in your head is one of the best methods to do that. And there are different techniques to create secure passwords. There really are. There's passphrases. So if you picked the first verse of your favorite book and then put the name of the service in the front of it. So the first verse of your favorite book, and it could be 60 characters long, but it's definitely something you'd remember. It's extremely long. Nobody's ever going to guess that.
Mm-hmm.
If they did, they'd have to know you extremely well. And then put the name of your service, like Facebook, in the middle or at the end of that. There's combinations for these things to make them not so overly complex. And I think that that's really where we've gotten lost is the complexity of things. So if you do choose a service, make sure that they're secure and that you trust them, and make sure that they're a legitimate company as well. So be careful.
Right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
another thing. So, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I mean, like, but there are a lot of people, and I know some of them who keep all of their passwords on
Oh,
notes in their phones. I'm
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know,
Bad idea.
tell one because I'm sure, like,
Yeah.
oh, multiple. Tell one reason
Yeah.
why.
I mean, it's all around a bad idea, right? From physical theft of your device to where if somebody were able to get into your device from a physical standpoint, or just somebody compromises your iCloud account, right? Your iCloud account stores all of that. So if your iCloud account is compromised, somebody has all of your passwords from that notepad that's in your phone. So it's just a bad idea. It's not encrypted. It's in clear text. You can see it. Just a bad idea. I would go with a password vault if you're going to choose one. And like I said, there's a lot of them out there. There's Dashlane and KeyPass and LastPass. There's a number of different services out there that are legitimate, that do have great raving reviews, and they actually offer like double encryption or hashed encryption, which basically means that nobody can read it. So they render your data completely unreadable by machines or humans. So look at those details and figure out. But also, rotation of your passwords is also important as well. Don't have stale passwords out there for years and years and years without changing them. That's never good.
Right. Okay. Oh my gosh. And just like you said, we could be here forever
Yeah.
on this, but let's talk about the next one, which is invasion of privacy.
Yes, yes. So this is a really interesting one, and this has become such a hot topic with COVID from contact tracing. A lot of countries are doing contact tracing currently for legitimate medical purposes to keep the public safe, to keep the public informed, and to prevent death in their countries. Right? It's a pretty good reason to track people's movements. Um, but with that, it's really raised the question of privacy across organizations and across the cybersecurity community. Privacy is something that we have seen with the advent of social media and different platforms out there and where we're storing our data. We've seen privacy decreasing over the years from a number of different perspectives. And it's beginning to be traditionally a little bit difficult to see where those lines are drawn between personal privacy and data. There are laws out there that regulate privacy, and those are laws that we typically focus on. You know, HIPAA, for those of you who are in the medical community understand what HIPAA is. It's the Privacy Act that regulates what personal health information can and cannot be shared outside of hospitals, right? So that is one industry vertical that is, I won't say protected because we deal with breaches at hospitals and things like that as well, but it's one industry that at least has some regulations around the privacy of your data, okay? And now what we're seeing are international regulations. We're seeing the GDPR coming out of the European Union, which is basically an all-encompassing privacy law for every European citizen that regulates how organizations must treat that private data of those citizens and giving them rights back to, I want you to forget my data, I want you to delete my data from your services, and gives them these rights back. The United States is now following that path as well. We're seeing laws in California and in New York State with the New York State Shield Act. So these things are coming about. Realize that these are happening for a reason, right? You're like I said before, your data is worth something. These free services that are out there, the agreements that you click through and say yes when you're signing up for a new app, read them. I know they're so boring. They're extremely boring and repetitive, and they may be 60 pages long, but they're there for a reason, and read what you're signing up for. That's probably the biggest takeaway in the invasion of privacy space right now, is the applications that you're putting on your phone and your computer and what you're downloading and the websites that you're using. Read those privacy policies, because hidden in there, they may tell you, we are going to sell your data to everybody in the United States who asks for it if they want it. And what you're doing is agreeing to that, right? So you got to be really...
Okay, so wait, so is there a page, because that is a fact, right? We don't read
Right.
those. Is there a
No.
page? No, there's not, like, oh, and usually on page X that information is in. No.
It could be, and they're supposed to, and there are certain laws around, against deceptive privacy practices, that they should make things clear and conspicuous. They say they should make them clear and conspicuous, and a lot of them are getting better at doing that to where it's basically right up front. And I know Facebook has also been brought into court about these things as well. So their hand was a little bit forced. But yes, to answer your question, a lot of these services will put those right up front, and they're usually pretty easy to find if you know what kind of headings you're looking for. Look for the things about what will you do with my data, who do you share my data with, right? Look at these things and determine, is it worth it for me to use this service? Is my data worth more? Is my privacy worth more than me using this particular service?
Mm-hmm.
That's the big thing, right? Among these technology companies that are out there, again, we have to ask ourselves the question: how are they making money if the service is free to us as the consumer? They're free to us because they are using our data as a tool. They're mining the data to use that on other services. So there is a cost with that. We have to be careful.
Yeah, this is why when people go like, oh no, it's free, I tell them, like, this is not free, people. This might be free for
Yep.
you, but they're making money because they have to do something with the information. They're just making it fun so that you can give the information. Like, there was recently something about, some people are into horoscopes, and those hackers, they do their job. That's their job. That's how they make their money, right? So they have to
Yep.
do what people are interested in. So they go interested in, like, in what you call it, in horoscope, right? In astrology, and then they go on putting in an astrology questionnaire, and they just serve it to you because you all of a sudden says something that's a keyword, and then they served it to you, right? I
Correct.
mean, is
Correct.
okay. So that's
That's
insane. So let's go in there though, in the terms of, oh yeah, Alexa is listening. Oh
right.
yeah, Siri is listening. Is that true? Is that how
Yeah.
they serve us?
Yeah, there are so many different ways that our data is collected now. Siri is definitely a big one. Alexa is a big one. I don't use either of them because albeit some of these services are well known enough to where they have diminished their collection capabilities to legitimate purposes, quote unquote. But nevertheless, they are collecting your data. So yeah, there are so many different ways, and one of the things that we have to realize is that there is an aggregate factor. There's an aggregating factor behind all this, and that is what's missed. And this is the slippery slope of privacy: is that these little tiny pieces of information, they may seem insignificant to give up today, right? Your hair color may not mean much to you today, but when you look at all of the other data sources that have been collected about you and about everybody else, that's somewhere on the back end, there are aggregators and correlators for all of this data that put it all together, and they paint a very clear picture about your life.
Mm-hmm.
So that is very true on the attacker standpoint from the dark web. The dark web is the web that you don't see, right? The internet that none of us really go on, except for my team and I. We go in there for research, and attackers go in there to share data and hide and things like that. But there is a whole nother internet behind this one called the dark web. And if you want to do some research on it, just Google it, and you're going to find some interesting things about that, where we're not going to get into too much about that today. That's another session. But on the back ends of those, they have the capability to aggregate data breach information. So let's say they stole your password and your username from organization A 2 years ago. And then from a hospital 5 years ago, they stole your medical file. And then from the beauty salon that you go to on Sundays, they stole their information. There are ways that they can correlate this data back and tag them as per an individual to paint a picture about you, so that your life could be compromised. And it's very hard to slow down somebody who has that much information. Imagine trying to call the Social Security office and reset something or do something with your identity when somebody already has more information than you even know about yourself, and they're basically playing with you on the other end. It's a very difficult thing, so be careful about it.
I mean, yeah, how you put it that way, that's probably how they get the celebrities, right? Like they're like,
Yeah,
okay, because let's, for example, let's be honest, unless there's somebody who wants to like be really mean to us,
right,
we are not gonna kind of be in that spotlight as much
right.
as, right, a celebrity, or
Yep,
say, the president, whatever, right? So they're the one
right.
who are on that one. But for us, if say somebody just wanted to find out, somebody wanted to be mean to us, they can just pay somebody, and
Yeah,
that somebody will be like, you know what? Let me go to the dark web and see what so and so has on this particular person. Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. There's a lot of different ways, and I mean, they do target individuals as well. We do see that a lot. I mean, they target a lot of vulnerable groups, so we'll talk about it a little bit here today. But they do target individuals for different purposes. A lot of that has to do with identity theft, but there are some very unclear reasons of which are extremely suspicious about why they are targeting individuals for a lot of this stuff. But most of it is the aggregation of data about your activities and things like that to use to maybe sell you things that you did never know that you needed, which is a whole nother story. That 1.5 thing, those ads, they pop up for a reason, by the way. So if you ever notice talking about something, and you get an advertisement that looks like it was something you were talking about,
Yeah.
and there's a reason for that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
So
that.
how can we stop that from happening?
Yeah. So one of the ways is, your iPhone, for example, or Android. Go into your application settings and turn off the access to your microphone and your camera. Please do it. It will save you a lot of heartache because you don't know
For
when these
all of
things are
it,
being.
so we go to all the apps and
Uh,
turn the mic off on all the apps.
Not you, because you do podcasts, and that would not be good. But for other people, you want to look through those applications and figure out which ones actually need a microphone and a camera, right? Your camera obviously needs access to your camera, but
Wait, Tyler, speaking of microphones, are you clicking your mic? Because I keep hearing some, a little something, something. Are you clicking your mic on your table or something?
nope.
Okay, because I keep hearing something, a mic moving every time you
Oh,
talk.
really?
And I'm about to
No kidding.
just reach on the screen.
I'm gonna stay very still. I'm gonna stay very still for the rest of
move,
the podcast.
move away from the table.
Maybe that's it. I tried to get my AirPods to work here before, but it wasn't happening.
All right, so we're back on, all right, the
Yeah,
microphones on our phones. So we just turn them off on the app. So for example, um, Instagram, that you want to hear and you want to, do your videos or whatever. Can we turn them off and then turn them on when we need them? Or,
yep.
yeah?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Turn things on when you need them, right? There's no reason to have your phone listening for everything that you're doing, or your Apple Watch or your Android Watch, whatever the case may be. Turn them off when you're not using them, and then when you use them, your phone will prompt you and say you can't take a video because your privacy settings don't allow your microphone to be used. So go turn it back on when you're using it. There's nothing wrong with that. And also, if you are extremely paranoid, you can put your phone on airplane mode if you're having an extremely private conversation. It's not a bad idea. It does turn a lot of settings off, so that is an option.
Ah, okay, that
Yeah,
is way easier. That is way
it's
easier.
pretty. It's pretty easy. Yeah, yeah. But you can't get calls and things like that when that happens. So just know that you'll be off the grid a little bit.
Yeah, but if you're having a nice conversation, a very private conversation, would you want to be with your phone anyway? Like, uh,
Like,
waiting for a phone call or whatever. You just,
exactly.
airplane that.
Less distraction. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh, Tyler, you have given so many tips. And for those of you watching, don't worry about it. I'm going to summarize it and I'm going to put it in the comments for you so you can find it easily. Thank you, you guys, for being here with us. Now, Tyler, we're going to talk about what's your next topic. Let's see. It is targeting of vulnerable groups online.
Yes. Yes. This is a really interesting one, and I think it's one that hits home for all of us, right?
Yes.
It really does, as parents especially. This is something that we really, really need to take seriously. This is the one thing that I would urge everybody to, if you have a child, and they don't have to be a teenager, right? Our children, they use iPads and iPhones and things like that. Start young with them, and you have to pry in a little bit, right? Because things are. Well, I'm going to start with children because children seem to be one of the more targeted groups out there from a number of different perspectives. The statistics of um, exploitation of children are absolutely staggering, and they're increasing by the minute. Especially with one of the things that happen, especially with children, and some of the statistics that we're seeing is that with COVID, with children being locked inside of their homes, unfortunately they are there with their abusers, right? So they don't have the outlet of school and can't get out. So we've seen a tremendous increase in the child exploitation side of things. So your children are exposed to many, many different things on the internet, and you have to really watch them carefully and know and understand exactly what applications they have on their phone or on their iPads or their Android tablet or whatever the case may be. There's an interesting story that's out there right now. There's a whole bunch of applications to where kids, mostly adolescents, know that if they download them, they look like a benign calculator application, but they're actually used for storing photos. So when the parents grab the phone, they see a calculator app and they don't even click on it. They don't even look at it. But it is actually a photo vault that needs a password to get into it. So these kids are extremely smart, and some of the parents have no idea what they're doing online. So um, from a child perspective, is understand what your children are doing. Sit down and talk to them. Talk to them, figure out what they're doing online, right? Not to be intrusive, but to educate them on the dangers of what may be out there. There are predators online who do prey on children, as we all know, and they're on popular sites. They're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they are all over Snapchat, they're on TikTok, they are on your kids' apps and looking for them to exploit. So you have to be extremely careful and bring them to school on that stuff. And also, you have to and you should look into what they're doing, because they may not even understand that they have maybe downloaded something or made a mistake that has exposed them, or somebody may be trying to compromise them as a child. So that's always number one in my book, because as a parent, right, that is definitely at the forefront of my mind. And
Yeah.
obviously, this is what I'm living. So
Yeah, and as parents, right? Is there anything that we could do in terms of monitoring apps? Like you guys have monitoring apps, for cyber and all this stuff. So can we as parents have apps that you mm, can recommend for us to track what they're doing? Because
yep,
when we sit down and talk to them and try to educate them, and obviously immediately they get defensive, right?
yep,
Is
yeah,
not a like mom is worry or dad is worry. It's about you just trying to invade my privacy and you're blah blah blah, right? And then in comes his calculator. And I'm gonna be like, let me use that calculator. I need it right now.
Yeah, exactly. Check through every single app. No, it's a good point because there's that fine line, right? There's that fine line with, you want to be not too intrusive with your children, but again, you do have to watch out what they're doing. There are so many different monitoring apps that are out there. Some are pretty good, some are not so good, some are fake and free. Do your research, because it really depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking to get as intrusive as listening to phone calls of your children, not something maybe I would recommend, but again, to each his own. But there are different applications where you can monitor the sites that they're visiting and things like that. And also, even with your home routers, like on our router, we have a setting that we can turn on to make sure that all social media cuts off at a certain time of the evening, so that in the middle of the night, your kids aren't up all night using at least Wi-Fi to go on to different sites and things like that that could obstruct their education in the morning, and they don't get out of bed, whatever the case may
Right.
be.
But
So
about
do your
that,
research. Yeah.
Tyler, I'm sorry, but about that, right?
Yep.
You have the router and you go
Yeah.
on and do your thing in the router. But these smart little things called children and adolescents, right? They
Correct.
turn the router off and they reset the router. So then there's no password. Everything that you have entered in, all the rules and everything that you have put in there gets,
Hmm. Hmm.
reset.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
what do we do
If
in that case?
so if you recognize that your child is circumventing your security controls, refer them to me for a job. So I'm serious. If you see your kids, really flourishing in that, and that's something I think as children that we did in this career field is circumventing security controls and tinkering and things like that. If you see them with an interest in that, push them towards that field because they could be very good at it, and try to harness that. That it's either that or give them a flip phone. I mean, there's really they can figure it out, and if they do figure it out, then it's something that you're just going to have to monitor. And when they do circumvent those controls, they have a conversation with them about it, right?
I just
But
use
there
the
are a
router.
lot
I
of
just unplug the router and sleep with it. That's all I
put
do.
it on.
Yeah, they
Yep.
have they have ways. But okay, so
Yeah.
let's go back to the apps that you were talking about before I got that idea.
Yep.
The apps
Okay.
that we could use to monitor what our kids are doing.
Yep. So I don't want to list too many of them because there are so many out there, and my kid is actually not of age to where I've actually had the time to test these out yet. My
Mm-hmm.
kid is only, she's not at that age yet. But if you just Google out there child monitoring apps, you're going to see a plethora of different things. You're going to see GPS applications, which are great to know where your child is at all times. And I mean, your kid would probably be fine with that as well to a certain age, right? Being able to understand where they are, they're going on a play date, and there's a GPS token in their backpack or in their shoe or whatever the case may be. There's different things as far as tracking their location on that front. There is application tracking as well that you can put apps onto their iPhone that would basically dictate how long they can stay on social media and what they're doing and things like that. So I say just do your research on it and find exactly what you're looking for and find what problem that you're trying to solve. The reason I say that is the last thing you want to do is be overloaded with tracking data that you don't know how to use, right? So if you're tracking all of their web browsing, you're tracking their location, their phone calls, their text messages, and everything in between, you could soon find yourself with way too much information to even do anything with.
Right.
So find exactly what you're trying to monitor, and whether that be application usage, search for that. If that's I want to monitor my kids' messages, search for that, right? If there's somebody specific that you're trying to block from conversing with your kid, talk to your cell provider. I want to block this certain number from ever being able to reach my kid, right? It's a situational thing that I think you want to look at rather than casting a huge wide net across the board. If that makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay.
Yep.
And you did mention, TikTok before and all those, that's where the predators are, but they are in Snapchat. They are
Yeah.
anywhere their target
Absolutely.
is, right? That's where
Yes.
they are. So, but TikTok got
Yeah.
so famous, right? Um, is there like a greater security risk on that? Because I read something about, that being like some
Yeah.
government, blah blah blah. What was that
Right.
about?
Well, so it all boils back to, it all boils down to, there are certain countries out there that their governments allow them to peek into any kind of data that flows through their country. China being one of them. China is a country to which the government can look into any single business or individual's browsing history or internet logs, whatever the case may be, in the country of China. So I think in the case of TikTok, it was found that there was a Chinese holding company that actually owned them, and there was some uncertainty about the data going over to China in those cases, and I think that's where that came from. But you're right, target-rich environments are exactly where these predators hang out. TikTok, Snapchat, all of them are guilty of that.
Mm-hmm. Oh Jesus Lord. And more things is so about the elderly, right? Because they're another
Yes.
group. They're another group that they're coming into trying to keep, keep in touch with their
Yeah.
family and grandchildren and all this stuff.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I'm smiling because I have an elderly mother, and she's pretty good now because obviously I'm always constantly telling her to stop clicking on stuff that's not real. Don't send me that. That I don't want to see this. This is not what you should be clicking on. But at the end of the day, we do have to realize that the generations before us didn't have the luxury of growing up with technology like we did. Um, and the generation coming after us, they have a different experience growing up with technology. So our generation is kind of right in the middle to where we saw not the advent of the internet back in the early 70s or before when it came popular, but we saw an inception standpoint, and we grew up with the internet, so we understand how it works. The generation before us, they make a lot of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
As far as phishing goes, they're constantly being targeted for phishing attacks. They are targeted with extortion attacks, and I'm sure you probably know of elderly people that are called from somebody and they say, I have your grandson, I've kidnapped your grandson and I want a ransom to let him go, and they know the grandson's name and all that, and then the elderly person releases money to these people. It happens so much. It is absolutely insane.
Wait,
These
really? Wait, I
attackers.
haven't heard this. So wait,
Oh yeah, that's just one of them. There are tons of them now.
wait,
Absolutely.
so the grandparents don't call the
Nope.
parents? They just do
Nope.
it?
Yeah, they just do it. The IRS scams are big ones as well. The IRS scams are really prevalent to where they will call the elderly and tell them they owe money to the IRS. They're going to be arrested if they don't. And they have enough information on these elderly people to give them a little bit of credibility. We know your birthday, we know your social security number, we know your address, your home phone, your daughter's name, whatever the case may be. They know this information because they've already breached other companies, or they breached that individual and they have credibility now. So it becomes more believable for these people to just give money away. And that's usually what they're looking for, is they're looking for a quick payday. And unfortunately, the elderly are much more susceptible to giving into those things, um, which is unfortunate. And we have seen cases before. Personally, we don't work with individual cases for personal identity theft and things like that. It's all corporate or like government agencies and stuff like that. But we have seen individuals have their savings accounts drained. 85-year-old women or men with their savings account drained from cyber attackers, and their banks, they didn't report it within 2 weeks or whatever the FDIC insurance limits were, so their savings accounts were gone. We've seen that happen, and it is something that if you have grandparents, even if you don't, even if you have a neighbor who's elderly, talk to them about fraud, talk to them about online phishing, and tell them, please be careful. If you ever see something where somebody's asking you for money, or if you get a strange phone call and you want to give me a call, if you're a younger person and you understand tech, give them that outlet. And sometimes that's all they'll need. And yes, they may call your phone at 8 o'clock before Jeopardy, but answer your phone and let them know, yes, this is not legitimate. Don't click on it. And you may save them from a big headache.
Yeah, I mean, like one audience member goes, yes, that's scary. I had someone tell me she was my aunt Marlon, who's actually not alive anymore.
Oh, so on the topic of that, so deceased people are actually some of the biggest targets for identity theft, which not a lot of people understand. Is that people who are deceased, they can't speak for themselves, nor do they monitor their own credit anymore. So identity thieves, they do. So basically, if you have somebody in your family who's deceased, you want to contact the credit reporting agencies and you want to contact the Social Security Administration to let them know this person is no longer alive, because that would save you from having to deal with the fallout of potential identity theft of a deceased family member. Already a bad situation as it is, and now you've got to deal with somebody stealing their identity. It is a really hurtful experience for people who are grieving. So if you have somebody who passed away, put that on your checklist. Call Social Security, call credit reporting agencies, and let them know.
With all these technologies and all this, new things coming up, wouldn't you think that there will be something out there where when they already give the death certificate, they would just click a button and just report
Yep.
it across the board, right? Because they do that when somebody gets married. You don't have to go on saying all these things. They automatically send it. You're married,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So but that, because I mean, really, we're gonna have to call Social Security and all these places, like you said, we're grieving, and we're gonna have to go through that.
Right.
It's
Right.
all these
Yeah.
things.
It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. I mean, you don't have to do it the same day, right? But soon after, put a couple of phone calls in to just make sure the bases are covered. It's always a good idea. Children's identities are stolen all of the time. All of the time. It's insane. Children's identities they're like one of the biggest targets for identity thieves, again, because they can't speak for themselves. Here's the thing with your credit: freeze your credit. If you're not using your credit or opening up loans, call Experian, call TransUnion, call Equifax. I know they were breached, but you got to call them too. Call all three of them or go online and freeze your credit. I can't tell you how much heartache that's going to save you. I keep my credit frozen all the time. All of my colleagues do. The reason is because if we know we want to go buy a house, we go online and we unfreeze our credit temporarily. What that does is it prevents an identity theft from going into a car dealership and stealing your identity or taking out a loan in your name, whatever the case may be. Your credit's frozen, so they have to unfreeze it, and there's a waiting period for that to happen. So, really good thing for you to do. Yep.
So what about in the same talking as credit? There's people who have their app. Oh yeah, check out my credit, and they just pull that credit, man. Like trying to check it out every day, looking at. I mean, how is does that go anywhere? In terms of crossing information. You know what I mean?
Right.
How
Right.
is that the same as freezing the credit? Is that where you're going with that?
You can, yeah. It depends, right? I mean, the I understand what apps you're talking about, like Credit Karma and the Equifax app and things like that. Yeah, they share your data. They sure do. They share your data to a lot of different parties that are out there. But it depends on the back end security of that company. We all know that Equifax was hit with a massive breach, and I think it was 100 million Americans' data was stolen. So it's likely that the majority of people who are watching this right now, your data is already stolen, including my own. And especially if you ever work for the government, your data is probably already gone with the OPM breach as well. So again, just check out the services that you're subscribing to and hope for the best on their security on the back end. Credit is a tough one because there's no way to escape that. You need credit. You need to have credit to buy things, to purchase a home. So we're kind of bound to that. So protect your credit, freeze it when you're not using it.
So when you say freeze it, so what happens? Like if someone tries to apply for a loan or buy a car, nothing
Yep.
happens because it's
Nothing
frozen.
happens. You would
Okay.
actually, yeah, and you can actually get alerted from the credit reporting agencies. Like, when your credit is frozen, you have to freeze it across all three credit bureaus.
Mm-hmm.
But when someone tries to steal your identity, first of all, it throws up a flag to like a car dealership and says, this person's credit is frozen, and they put in a note, and they have cameras in their dealership or wherever this person is, and that can be tracked back if you ever need to backtrack from there quickly. Or the police do for that matter. Don't hunt down cyber criminals yourself. Please don't. We all want to, but just don't do it.
Tyler,
But
Tyler, when you mentioned dark web, I'm like I'm gonna hit the dark web.
it's an interesting place, that's for sure, and it's much bigger than the internet, the surface internet that we all use today. So, but yeah, freezing your credit is super easy, and it keeps people from getting into your credit, and it gives you a little bit of an alert. If somebody tried to use your credit and they were blocked, and you don't have to worry about identity theft. So,
Okay. Okay.
yep.
So here we go. So now I believe it's your last slide, social engineering, and you did talk about it a little bit, but go ahead and just talk to us about it because that's what they do. They just go on and take all of our information and send those little cute apps and those little cute tests, right, to get
Yep.
us going.
Yep.
So talk to us about it, please.
Yeah. So social engineering is it's an art form in my career field, and there are people who are extremely talented at it that you wouldn't even know that they're prying for information. And coming from the intelligence community myself in a previous life, you begin to understand what social engineering is and what is the value of asking probing questions to people. And they can come in so many different forms. If you are a marked target, they can be personal. They can be somebody walking up to you and asking you questions. Social engineering doesn't just mean somebody wants to get your password. Social engineering could mean somebody would like to kidnap your kid and they're asking questions to you about that. So it's really important to understand when somebody may be prying for information and should you give them that information. And if that's on Facebook from you receiving a message or a friend request from somebody you've never seen before, or a LinkedIn message, or an email phishing request, or a phone call, realize that all of these different avenues can be used for social engineering, and recognize what information you're giving out to these people. Again, some of them are extremely talented, and they know what questions to ask that would lead to more answers as well. Gaining your trust is one of the first steps of social engineering, is really creating a rapport with somebody, leveling with them, something common, whether that's, a common grievance that somebody has, or that's a common interest that somebody has with somebody else. Recognize when somebody may be trying to get close to you and you can't really figure out why. Go with your gut. That's the one thing I always say to people is, if you feel like something's wrong, go with your gut. You don't have to be polite to people who call you prying for information. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of doing that in 2020. Neither do we have the luxury of doing that via email or whatever the case may be. You have to be a little bit suspicious of people while still being inviting enough to be a decent human being. That's the challenge, right? Without
Right.
wearing a tinfoil hat, but you want to be careful, and you do want to guard yourself and your family to an extent.
Yeah, so here's oh my gosh, there's so many things to worry about there, Tyler. It's like how do we, but we just, like you were saying before, in going with the apps for children, right? We just take it one step at a time. We go, okay, so we want to monitor the messages. Okay, we do for that, we search for that. So we want to make sure our credit is good. Let's freeze our credit. That's, so taking steps little by little instead of just trying to do everything at once, right, will help us out,
Right.
because we can go crazy. I mean, like this, just, I'm like, okay, you
Yeah.
know what, I'm off social media. I'm off the grid.
Right.
I'm
Right.
off the matrix. I'm gone.
Taking a red pill. I
Oh
know.
my
I know.
gosh. I'm gonna say, yeah, I'll take that red pill, man. But
It's
but
interesting.
here's a comment, or actually like a question here. I'm gonna put it up so you could actually, can you see that?
I can't.
Okay, so I'm gonna read it to you. Is it
Okay.
true that our data is not actually our data? In other words, we don't own our personal information.
hmm In some cases, you are correct, but this is why there's legislation coming now. And like I talked a little bit about before about GDPR, which was the General Data Protection Regulation out of the European Union, because the European citizens, they're extremely sensitive to privacy. After the Holocaust and everything that happened in Europe in World War II, it's a different zone over there from giving up personal information. They understand the slippery slope that Americans didn't get until it was too late, unfortunately. So what's happening now in the United States is there's new regulations that are coming out, depending on the state that you live in, to where you can contact companies like Facebook, and you can contact Twitter and whoever else, and there's a million other services, and you can tell them, my name is John Smith, and I want you to forget who I am. I want you to delete all of my data. I want you to purge me from all of your records. And they are legally obliged to do that. They have to do that for you. So yes, to a certain extent, has it gone too far and you've given your data? We all have, not you, who's ever asking this question, but we've all given our data away, and it's gone really far, and they may have shared it out with other people, so you can't control that spread of the data. you can contact companies and say, remove my information. I don't want you to have my data anymore. Show me that you've deleted my data, and they are legally obligated to do that in a lot of cases. So exercise your rights, make them work. I do. I call them.
Of course you did. Of course
Give
you
me.
did.
I do. I don't spend too much time on it, but there's other services that are out there as well. There's one called Delete Me. I hope that the biggest takeaway from this isn't people hiding in their houses and putting tinfoil around their heads. But there are services out there to help you remove your online footprint a little bit as well. If you type in delete.me, I think it's called, that's a service that will work on removing aspects of your personal information from the surface web. So there's a
Okay.
lot of stuff. There's businesses around this. Yeah.
So the question from that is like, oh my gosh, we're almost ready to go. The
Oh,
question, piggybacking on that, is does that work for medical data under HIPAA?
ooh, that's a tough one. Yeah, medical data under HIPAA. You can your HIPAA data. It does belong to you. It certainly does belong to you. Now that HIPAA data is shared, so there's a lot of sharing going on in HIPAA because it's a closed industry. There are exemptions to that. There's a lot of exemptions to that. A lot of them. I'll give you one aspect of an exemption to where if you're a government worker and you have, an ultra secret clearance, they can look into your mental history to make sure that you're not a risk to give up data to a foreign nation or something like that. So there are exemptions around that. But again, try to exercise your rights, right? If you got to be specific about it if there's something that you're looking for. To say I want all of my medical information removed from everything is probably not a logical thing for you to do because it's been shared with so many different parties. But if you can identify the services, especially online services that have your medical information, you can certainly contact them and have them remove your data or ask them to remove your data. However, going to your doctor that you've had for the last 20 years and saying, burn all my paper records, right, it may be a little bit more of a challenge for you. So again, it depends on what you're looking for. Applications, those are pretty easy. You can call them or send them an email, say, delete my data, here's who I am. Doctor's offices that you've been visiting for 20 years, maybe a little bit more of a challenge, especially if they're real traditional or brick and mortar. So,
Mm-hmm.
but you do have rights. It is your data.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Tyler, so that really happens that they test the mind to people to see if it can break, like, because everything that you're saying here, right, is true, right? And obviously movies make it because they know this, right? But I've only
Right.
seen that, right, on the movies where they're like trying to get this person, this villain, to give all the information, right? So government people actually go through a process like that where they actually try to break into their mind to see if they will give secret information out. Is that
Oh
what
yeah,
you
sure.
said?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a million cases of it. I have a construction uniform in my office for when we go into organizations posing as maintenance people to socially engineer them to open the doors for us, and we have hidden cameras. We do it. We do it all the time, even in the commercial sector. So
Oh
yeah, for
wow.
sure, the government definitely exercises those programs as well. But it's interesting, and attackers do it as well. The reason for every action that we take, there's a reaction, right? And the reason why we do these things is because attackers are using these exploitation tactics to get into organizations and to compromise people as well. So yeah, yeah,
The cybersecurity field sounds so exciting. I mean, it sounds like it's
yeah.
really exciting to you, is it?
It's very exciting. It is. There's a couple of different sides of it, right? There's the side to where it's exciting and it's offensive, to where we're breaking into organizations with authorization, obviously, which is fun and it's proactive. We get to train organizations on how to get better. There's also the opposite side of that, which is going into organizations that they may not be in business tomorrow if you don't help them very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So there's flip sides to this, to where yes, it's a very enjoyable field. On the other side, there are those times where companies and organizations are in a state of panic, that you really have to be that calming voice, to not just a voice but actually to mitigate a very bad situation. So
Right.
yeah, it's fun. You have to have let things roll off the shoulder easily and keep your stress levels in check and take things with a grain of salt and keep on moving forward.
And you are actually like you're in the right field because you're very very calm, very level headed, we have hung out and you always kind of like, and you're just in the perfect field, and I'm honestly so proud of you for everything that you're doing, and for receiving that invitation, getting into the Forbes group, which is an elite group of cybersecurity experts. It's amazing, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And also, all the things, all the information that you have given us. I'm gonna go for one last because I believe this is gonna be very useful for people. And here's the question: would delete me remove from the all your data from everywhere, including the dark? Wait, I'm gonna say this: the dark web.
Dark web. That's right. You got to bring it down to baritone. You say it right. So I think to a certain extent that it would. Um, the last time I used, I think it was Delete Me or a similar service, first of all they identify everything that they can find for you, and they show you here are all the places that we found your records on. Most of them are service web, to where it would actually, if you were to, the reason why it's a paid service is because if you were to go out and do this yourself, in some cases you would have to send written letters into these companies to remove your data. So if you have 150 organizations that it detects have your data, it becomes a really onerous process for you to run around and do all that. So dark web, I think to a certain extent, but I mean even the dark web, it's a really difficult thing because it's so hidden, and there's just places that they don't even know where to look in there. It's such a complex thing with the dark web, and it's so vast that we always, in the cybersecurity community, companies offer dark web scanning. Great, that's fine, but we have to realize that they're probably scanning the tip of the iceberg, and there are so many other things out there that you're really hard pressed to trust a company that says we're scanning the whole dark. If anybody ever tells you we're scanning the entire dark web, that's a lie. They're not going to do that. The lie detector says that's false on Maury. So don't go with that. Hopefully I didn't tangent too much on that one, but
No,
hopefully
no,
you.
no. So you know what? So when you go on the dark web yourself, do you like put a mask on and dress in black or?
A Guy Fawkes mask, like the anonymous. No, no. And I got to tell you, rarely, if ever, do I go on the dark web. It has to be for a very, very specific purpose,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a nasty place. I mean, there's reasons why people hide on there,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll guess at what it's filled with.
Yeah.
It's a crazy place. You can the dark web markets. You can hire a hitman. You can buy people. There's drug smugglers. I mean, it is insane. It's
Mm-hmm.
insane.
So
Yeah,
it's a
there's a lot of.
place. It's a place that you go to when you're trying to, because you're saying, you play both. You go in the defense and in the offense because you have to know what you're dealing with, right? So maybe that's one of the times where being in the dark web is good. I
Right.
think I'm about to be a cyber expert now. I'm about to just go back to school
Yep.
because everything about it just sounds so cool and it's just really exciting. Protecting people, just like you're saying, the advice that you gave about the elderly. I mean, you
Yeah.
work your whole life, you're retired, you just want to enjoy your life, and all of a sudden you
Yeah.
get this call and your account is gone and that's the end of your life almost. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's not right, you know
It happens. Yeah, and
it's
there's little recourse for these people, and that's what the real tragedy is that after these things happen, the FBI they've got bigger fish to fry. They're working with cases that are $50 million stolen, right? So
mm-hmm,
when somebody calls and they say my life savings was stolen, they say take a ticket, grab a number. Maybe they'll help you, but chances are it's going to be a very long time, if ever, that you see your funds again. So talk definitely talk to your grandparents, talk to the elderly, and tell them check your account on a daily basis. Set up alerts on their bank accounts for them.
mm-hmm.
Right? That's another thing you can do for your grandparents is just go into their bank accounts and set up alerts for spending or for bank transfers. Because if you catch it quickly, FDIC insurance is usually they're going to cover you up until a certain time period of reporting. So if you
Okay.
catch it later and report it, you could be good to go. and save them from being in a bad situation. So set those alerts up.
I will do that. But here, I want to do this for our friends on LinkedIn. All right. So I'm going to ask you a question regarding how, because I know we covered this earlier, but let's do this like how you say, companies usually have this budget and they want to buy, the latest and greatest, and they forget basic level security. Right.
Yep.
So then mention again one thing that they could do, or say, I don't know, two, if it's just simple, right? That they could do to get their company, their assets secured, right, from an attack.
Yep. So awesome question, and we're usually coming in on either the right side of that, to where they've called us to ask that question about what should I do, or we're on the back side where they've blown their budget and they still got hit with a cyber attack, right? So the first thing I recommend for organizations is how do I say this? To put the ego aside a bit and understand that if you're not an expert in cybersecurity, you need to talk to one. And if that conversation is only for an hour, just to get a firm understanding of even going in the right direction with this before you make those purchases. Because as an IT director or as a director of security, whatever the case may be, if you spend $20 million on your security infrastructure and then that following year you undergo a massive data breach, you could have a serious problem on your hands, and that's a resume generating event for yourself.
Mm.
So we recommend, if you don't understand cybersecurity and your path towards a greater cybersecurity posture, consult with an expert. Call a firm, call a consultant, figure it out with them. If you're looking to take these things on yourself, look at a security framework and make sure that you're getting the basics down. When I say security framework, those of you in the information security community understand the 20 critical controls from the Center for Internet Security, or NIST. Pick a framework, a tried, trusted, and true framework, and measure yourself against that. Look at the basic steps within there, start from the top, and say, do I have all these things implemented? And if you don't have these basics implemented, start over. Do not pass go. Go back and start over. Implement those basics, and then go forward. Don't spend money unnecessarily. It's a real killer. It really is, and it really pains us to see organizations that have blown their budget when we go in and we say, you could have just paid for consulting time, and we could have told you how to use all the tools that you have currently today to bolster your security posture above what you've just done by spending, $5 million, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that
Yep.
is that is very important. And usually, unfortunately, like networking equipment, a new setup costs a lot of money for you not to have the basic level of security, So, yeah.
Right.
So that's it. So hire an expert, to help you look through that before you
Yep.
go on spending this, a lot, your whole budget on hardware or like a new
Correct.
sofa or something like that. So okay, so
Correct.
that was for businesses. So for us, it's just the
Yep.
authentication, the two factors that we get. Oh yeah, this and that. That will be good
Yep.
for us. And then turn our microphones off unless we need it.
Yep. So first, let me back off from that a little bit. So one of the most basic steps that I recommend that individuals take is to inventory the applications that you use. Inventory, write them down. What do you use? You use, Bank of America. You use Facebook. You use Twitter. Make a list of every single service that you signed up for, and then start that process. So you've got to understand an inventory first, and then go down that list and implement protections on those accounts. And even if you come up to a new account to where Twitter, Google Twitter security best practices when you get to Twitter on your list, and then secure your Twitter account as per those best practices. There's a lot of things that you can do outside of this as well, but inventory first, and then implement those best practices against each one of those services, and know what you're putting out there. Read the fine print.
That
Read
makes
it.
sense. That makes sense. And then on the agreement, just look for the title. What are you gonna do with my data?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Where's it
Right?
going? Yeah.
Yeah.
What
What
am
are
I,
you
what
gonna do?
is the cost? What is the true cost of this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's my data, and if I don't want to share my data, you're not gonna get it.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. And
This is
ask for it
Lord.
back.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So, oh my gosh, Tyler, this was so, so great. This is my guest right here, Tyler Ward. He's a vice president of security, Infinite Group Inc. You guys can find him maybe on LinkedIn. He has a secure account.
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on
Yes,
LinkedIn.
you're
It's
on
the only thing
LinkedIn.
I'm on.
Yeah, and then you guys follow me at Officially Unofficial TV on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram so that you can be notified when these great topics and content comes up. This is Anna Heed with Officially Unofficial, and this is my guest, Tyler Word. Thank you so much for being here, and you guys, thank you for being here with us and spending your time with us. Thank you so much, you guys. Bye.
Bye bye.